Good morning, Winterview, back with another brief dialogue for his dear friend Annastacey. This dialogue, as I drive my car to the beach to surf, will cover another challenging topic of interest. The self, the personality, purification, liberation. Fancy words. We're going to be talking about fancy words. That's my topic for today. The personality is that cluster of characteristics that we commonly associate with the individual or ourselves. Nice people, bad people, awesome people, histrionic, crazy people, generous, kind, uncaring, saintly, boring, and so on and so forth. These are the characteristics that the mind ascribes to the individuals based on many different reasons, but let's just say, broadly speaking, their behavior. There's a very common idea that liberation, enlightenment, we'll say, will lead to some improvement on the person, which, if you flip it around, suggests that there is some dissatisfaction with the person, with the individual. In other words, we take a look at these characteristics, usually ourselves, and we do not like what we see. We see maybe a person who is not that funny, not that interesting, a bit boring, maybe even an unattractive personality. Which, if we flip that around, means that other people are better than us. So we hope desperately that if we can liberate ourselves, find enlightenment, and so forth, that we will become more attractive, not only to ourselves, but to others. We will be awesome, golden, glowing orbs of love and purity that people will meet and go, "Wow, you are so totally awesome, full of your loving, golden, glowing awesomeness," and so forth. That is the general idea. The idea of self-improvement has long fascinated, captivated humanity. I think fundamentally there's a recognition that some characteristics are more helpful and some are less helpful, we might say. For instance, to be funny and interesting with a cocktail glass in your hand, regaling people of wrestling tigers in the Himalayas and so forth, seems to attract people to you. Whereas talking in a mopey voice about the price of mothballs going up in the local supermarket, which is really annoying for you because last year they were 10 cents cheaper and now they're, oh my god, they're like $1.20 a pack, will not endear you to many people. You might even be seen as boring. Who knows? So there is a general recognition that certain clusters or classifications of personality have advantages, we might say. The idea, in general then, for self-improvement, is to see if we can somehow get rid of those crappier aspects of the self and imbue ourselves with more dynamic and impressive characteristics, etc. Sounds like a great idea, doesn't it? Unfortunately, there's a downside. The process, in general, is, broadly speaking, called purification. The idea that we can gradually improve ourselves over time. But the mind is a tricky little creature. If we decide that a certain characteristic is desirable, we are, by virtue of that claim, asserting that the opposite is undesirable. Let us choose a simple example to illustrate this purpose. Let's choose funny. Was a good one. People want to be funny, or they want to be seen as funny, and they're desperately aware that if they are not funny, they are undesirable. So they might try and develop a kind of funny or witty, jesting personality type. But what they're also saying, even though they didn't realize it, is that unfunny is not acceptable. What they have to therefore do is be in a constant state of vigilance and avoidance for anything unfunny. They will keep their mouth shut unless they can be funny. They are desperately aware that every comment is framed around the "I must be funny" framework, and so, if what they say is not found to be funny by their audience, low mood ensues, feeling lack of self-worth, feeling down, and so forth. I don't accept myself, in essence. So self-improvement, although it seems like a jolly good idea at the time, is fraught with peril. Self-esteem seems to be the aim of the game. We improve ourselves, supposedly, to feel better about ourselves. What about just feeling better about yourself for no reason? What about feeling good about your anxiety, feeling okay about your mopey, depressive tendencies, feeling everything's alright with my tediously boring interests, and so on? This is a more, as if you were a Buddhist, you might say, equanimous, liberal, broad point of view about everything. It sounds alright too, if you can do it, but it seems that not many people are, that even-tempered about their own limitations. However, if you can find some way to totally accept yourself in all your myriad of colours, a broad acceptance, you'll probably find life a lot more easier. You'll find that you accept others immediately, and you'll find, interestingly, that others feel comfortable around you. They'll feel accepted totally because they understand that you're not hung up on having to accept only specific things in people. They'll feel relaxed around you. A funny thing is about liberation or enlightenment, etc., the mysterious state, is that people think suddenly on enlightenment I will totally have an awesome personality, or if not that, I will totally accept myself in all my foilables. Both are fantasies, alas. The idea that on liberation that you will suddenly totally accept yourself is a nice idea, but there's no one there to totally accept oneself on liberation. Therefore it suggests that after liberation you might find, to your dismay, that you don't accept stuff about the personality, or rather, to be more accurate, that characteristics and flavours of that person are still problematic. The idea that the personality will suddenly be eradicated and replaced with a whole new package, a new improved, a superhuman, a sort of messiah-like being of amazingness, which is the common fantasy, is also a fantasy. That will probably not happen. It's true that changes to the personality are likely on liberation. The reason for this is that there are many self-conscious drivers of the facets of the personality which tend to fall away. Not necessarily, but it's hard for them to maintain on liberation when it's seen in some ways that the whole game is a joke. Things that were taken seriously do tend to fall away. But that's not necessarily the case. So this dialogue was to clarify that on liberation the personality can stay the same. And what actually we find from reports is that the personality in some ways becomes more celebrated, perhaps even more exaggerated. It's the role that the apparent individual was assigned to play by, let's say, God. Let's just say God. God said, you have to play this particular role in life. You have to be the miserable, boring person at parties. That's your role. And suddenly on liberation you recognize that role in its glory. It's like, yes, this was the role that I was born to play. And now at parties you hide in the corner and you are totally uninteresting. And not only that, you exaggerate your uninterestingness because that's the game and it's delightful somehow. There's this sort of funny awesomeness about your boring personality, whereas before there was a kind of resistance to it in a way, like I don't like it kind of way. But now there's no one there to moderate that personality. It just seems to unfold and express naturally. Of course, I'm making it sound like that's guaranteed or that's certainly going to happen. Not certain at all. I hope this dialogue is giving you, the listener, a sense of some of the misconceptions, you might say. Some people have a sense that the idea behind liberation is to keep refining and improving the personality until they're just so utterly, awfully nice that liberation must certainly be a natural consequence. Liberation has, as I've said this before, nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do with the person or the personality. You can be, well, let's be coarse for a second, a complete fuckwit and be liberated, so to speak. Yes, liberation apparently happens to everyone and anyone, despite what flavor you come in. Liberation does not suggest or promise any improvement on that person or personality. A nice person before liberation might probably be a nice person after liberation. Awful, annoying people before liberation, let's face it, will be more annoying possibly after liberation, more irritating. It's looking in the wrong direction. But getting back to the idea of self-esteem, and as a psychologist I do play that role to help people with self-esteem. So let's try and give you a few tidbits as you progress towards liberation and enlightenment. That was a joke, by the way. First, we look at ourselves and we decide, you know what? This is my role. This is the role that I was born to play. Now this is another caveat here, highly conceptual. And I'm just giving this as a tidbit of information, a suggestion, if you will, if you want to feel a little bit better about yourselves from a psychological perspective. Take a look at yourself and recognize that you probably have good points and you probably have negative points. If you're in negative point denial, as in, I have no negative points, then I seriously suggest you take a really, really, really good look at yourself. if you are in magnifying the awesomeness about yourself, I suggest that you just cool that a little bit and don't worry about trying to magnify your awesomeness. People don't give a shit, really. And if you have negative points, and if you have been avoiding your negative points and you want to somehow feel a bit better in general, just be okay with the negative stuff about you. Be okay with the allness of you, okay? Laugh at your negativeness. Laugh at your own faults and your shortcomings. They're actually quite funny. They're ridiculous, in fact. But if you don't see the ridiculousness, funniness, you're going to be judging them awfully, judging yourself and hating yourself for them. So what I suggest is you take a look at that mean, selfish streak and you say to yourself, you know what? I'm a mean, selfish bastard. I can be a mean, selfish bastard. I'm totally going to own that. It doesn't mean I'm always going to be a mean, selfish bastard. It just means that's one facet of my personality that sometimes pops up from time to time when I feel like it. I don't want to share my ice cream today. Sorry, I don't want to give you $1 for the train because you lost your wallet. I'm a mean, selfish bastard. You know, I know you're a starving orphan in Africa, but I actually just feel like buying a new Wi-Fi system for my home and I don't care about the plight of the poor. That's just me, okay? Yeah. Alternatively, you might have a quite good characteristic already, something generous about your personality and your temperament that everyone quite likes. So what? Okay, great. You're amazing. Well done. Pat yourself on the back for that. Keep on being that. No one's going to give you any special brownie points in heaven for that characteristic. But just keep on doing it. Why not? It serves a good purpose in this world, and we all love you for it. So we just own it all. We own our crap, and we own our awesomeness, if it happens to be there. We just love it and recognize that it's all fine. It's all totally fine. There's no big daddy God in the sky who's going to say, you shouldn't be like this, you should be more like this. That is the childish fantasy of God. Let us go with the God model for a second, because that's always an interesting one. If God made the world, if God made creation, let's just say, hypothetically, then God made the cranky, shitty, awful people too. And therefore, he needs you, or she needs you, to play that part. So don't feel bad. Just love it. Love yourself as you are. Love it all. This has been Winterview with another very brief dialogue on personality, self-esteem, person, liberation, and other fancy pants words that seem to mean a lot to people. Whatever you're doing today, enjoy it. I'm going for a surf. No doubt I will enjoy that. Comments are welcome.